Idealism prevails. Make the world a better place.
Mr. Morano, you've written a movie in 2016, or you published it. It was called Climate Hustle.
Yes.
And what is it about? And is it still relevant, or is it maybe outdated nowadays? Have so many things changed?
It's the exact same debate. There has been a change. The biggest change since we released Climate Hustle has been the advent of the public health emergencies for COVID, because the climate activists were at first jealous about the way public health was able to shut down transportation, the economy, reduce emissions overnight without a single vote of any legislator in the world. And then they wanted in. So climate activists said, if we can shut down the world for a virus, we can do the same thing for climate. So that's why Climate Hustle 2, which came out in 2020, addressed that. And now most of the climate agenda, from the first film to current days, from 2016 to now, they used to talk about getting legislation passed, the Green New Deal. We're going to vote on this. We're going to have a vote on that. We'd have hearings. You'd have town halls. Since COVID, no democracy need apply. We will ban gas-powered cars without a single vote of any legislator anywhere. We'll do it through unelected bureaucrats, through executive orders. We'll do it through corporate government collusion. We want to start restricting meat eating. We don't need a vote on that. No one's going to vote to restrict meat eating, but we're going to do it through net zero climate goals, through the bureaucrats who come into the farmers. They're going to reduce nitrogen-based fertilizer. They're going to come after methane, which is going to reduce the nitrogen restrictions, reduce crop yields. The methane, of course, goes right after animal agriculture for their emissions. So, and then they're going after freedom of movement, the climate compliance costs on airlines, 15-minute cities. It's a whole thing where they saw that you didn't need lobbying, voting, persuasion. They're just imposing this agenda now. And that's the big difference that's changed. In terms of the scientific argument, no, nothing's really changed on that. I mean, there's new data, there's new stats, but essentially on every metric, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, wildfires, droughts, even the United Nations admits that there's no increase in storminess on climate scales, global climate scales of 30, 50, 100 years. Where you can find a trend is like, in Western California or in Northern Germany since 1998, there's been an increase of droughts. And if that continues, or there was a record storm here, there's always going to be records broken. There's always that. In terms of sea level rise, sea level has been rising since the end of the last ice age. In terms of temperature, in the United States, we have the best temperature records. The 1930s heat waves are still 8 to 10 times hotter than anything the U.S. has experienced before or since. I don't know about before, because that's when they started the record, but since. And there's a whole movement afoot to get rid of the 1930s heat wave record because it shows heat waves in the U.S. declining dramatically. At any rate, the climate movement has moved into a absurd area now where every malady is blamed on climate change, and they're trying to merge ultimately climate change into a public health threat so that these unelected bureaucrats and public health can then impose what they need to for the safety of the public. And again, there's no votes necessary. Democracy no longer need apply in the climate debate.
Do you think that people will wake up one day and will realize that all of this is done without their consent, without them being asked? Or will there people be like, have the notion of, okay, we've never been asked and they're just doing it and we've never said anything about it. No one.
Yeah, I think there's rumblings of waking up. The recent EU elections where there's a pushback, not enough, but we have an election in the US. We'll see what happens. But it's an age-old problem throughout human history. Thousands of years of human civilization have taught us that the ruling class, governing elite, our leaders have always tried to come up with reasons why the rest of us can't be free. And it usually involves crises, emergencies. It could be war, terrorism, a virus, climate change, and they restrict our rights and they bypass democracy to impose on us this idea of an expertocracy. We defer to experts. Are you an epidemiologist? Well, then shut up and mask your child for 8 hours a day in school because the experts know what they're talking about. And there's an impulse by these people, and what I mean by these people, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the Bill Gates, the Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, the billionaire class, the intellectual people that go to the finest universities. They honestly believe that if we are left to our own devices, we, the peasants or the masses, are left to our own devices, we will create inequity, racism, environmental catastrophe, a climate crisis, a viral mass death with viruses. That's why we have to be told, lock down, mask up, take the jab, shut up. We're the experts. We know what's best for you. They actually get like a God complex where they think they're saving humanity. So when you say, will people accept it or will they fight back? It's a constant battle throughout the history of civilization. We're going to ebb and flow. Right now, since COVID, particularly March of 2020, the sides of lack of freedom and totalitarianism have been crushing people, combined with the net zero climate agenda. And now we're finally seeing the pushback. The question is, how much of a pushback? And each time people seem to be accepting this world of all these limits. Meat restrictions, food restrictions, travel restrictions, energy restrictions, and they want to condition us. So my hope is that people wake up, but even if we wake up, it's a constant battle. You have to look at history in the long hundreds and thousands of years, and it's not something we can just solve like that.
What are you going to do in order to oppose this, in order to make people waking up?
Conferences like this are very important. You bring in experts. We have the Nobel Prize winner in science and physics here, one of the most recent winners, Dr. John Clauser, who's going to talk about just basically what the climate science is, the consensus is. We have experts in every field here, from politics to other areas of science. So first, you have to get the word out, and then you have to fight for free speech is one of the biggest, because you have to have the right to publicly dissent and reject whatever the government or government agencies say. We have reached a sad, dangerous point in the once free Western world, where any citizen who opposes a government agency's claim, be it on public health, be it on climate, be it on energy, is automatically considered a misinformer, a disinformer, and not telling the truth, and you get fact checked. So we have to get to a point where free speech matters. Cancel culture is an evil, insidious thing that's harming free speech and harming free societies. So we need people to resist, not comply. If there's another virus scare, whether it's disease X or bird flu, people need to realize you don't social distance, you don't take a forced jab, you don't follow government orders. We need rebellion and organized rebellion and resistance from day one. You don't give them a week to flatten the curve or 2 weeks. You say bullshit on day one and you fight, and you don't let them get away with it this time.
But we saw, for example, with COVID, that this is a lot of people, they obliged and they did it. So they followed the narrative and what they've been told to. So how big is the hope that next time we will experience something like this? It will be different.
Well, I think the couple things will be different next time. There'll be immediate organized opposition. And I've talked to many people who care about human freedom and civil rights, who said our biggest mistake was waiting, like, oh, no one's going to put up with this. Oh, wait till the push. And we waited and waited and waited and waited. Next time, day one, we organize, we protest, we scream, we don't wear the masks. You absolutely refuse the jab, and you don't even social distance. And you just tell them, bullshit, we're not playing along. Now, that won't be everyone, but if we can double, triple, quadruple the amount of people, it makes it very hard for these public health tyrants to organize, to impose this agenda. And I'm just hoping that we've reached enough people. And I think we have. I mean, I think people are skeptical of lockdowns or church closures or canceled medical procedures. It was one of the darkest hours of the 20th century. And I keep saying 20th century, of the last 100 years, because we're in the 21st century. And it includes, Nazism, Soviet, Chinese rule. That was a dark period because it gave power and movement to a new class of tyranny, which is this technological tyranny, which you don't need. We no longer need the watchtower with the guardhouse and the machine guns and barbed wire fences. In our technologically advanced world today, you can cancel a person. You can prevent them from accessing their own bank account if they're declared a domestic terrorist. You can cancel them, defund them. If you have central bank digital currency, you can stop their ability to even go to the grocery store. And you could limit their freedom based on whether they follow the government's orders on vaccines and other things. So we have a point now where we have to fight back and fight back very hard. We also have to fight back against emergency powers that are temporary, never seem to go away. We're still living under these 9/11 terrorism emergency powers. It's time to strip the government of power, not the citizens.
Just a question that might our viewers or our public, like the people who watch our channel, interest is, what's the difference between Austria? What's the difference that you see between Austria and the United States, or maybe Europe and the United States, in terms of people opposing what they've been told or not?
Yeah, well, generally pre-COVID, I would have said that Europe is much more compliant with these agendas, with the climate agenda, and they don't even challenge the premise. And it's generally true. UK Parliament, European Parliament members, they don't want to challenge the narrative, even on COVID or particularly climate. However, when I was so disappointed in America's reaction to COVID, I now think Americans are much further along the same path as Europe was. But I still think we are more freedom oriented based on our, we have a constitutional right to free speech. It's one of our one of our Bill of Rights. And I think that Europe has always been a cautionary tale. Like, we don't really want to follow Europe. You're much more advanced on the climate energy front. I can't say you're much more advanced on the COVID. In many ways, I think the US was worse. We had more masking of children than most of the European nations did. Yeah, I'm not saying we were worse than Europe, but similar. I think the worst Western nations were probably Canada and Australia in terms of Western nations. But I think the cautionary tale is we have to be careful of following Europe down the net zero path. And the lesson really is we need political leaders and individuals to challenge the narrative. There is no climate emergency. There is no climate crisis. And net zero, even if we faced a climate emergency, would have zero impact on the climate. We'd all be doomed if we had to rely on the United Nations or net zero or the Green Deal to save us.
Mr. Morano, thank you
Thank you very much, Isabel. All right, appreciate it.
Idealism prevails. Make the world a better place.